Hello everyone, this is the second video of implementing functions, and we will continue with the previous argument about positional arguments and keyword arguments. Whenever you have a function where you're passing, say, positional arguments, here, which is the case, 4 and 16 are positional arguments, passing them in the right sequence, or where you are passing keyword arguments, you have to be careful. Always make it a point that you only give the positional arguments initially and you give the keyword arguments last. So let's see what happens. If you give the keyword argument first and the positional argument next, then when you run this, you'll see the Python gives an error called positional argument follows keyword argument. In Python, we always define positional arguments before the keyword arguments. So you have the positional argument 4 and then keyword argument, and this will work. When you run this, you will get 12, which is the expected outcome. So this is a very straightforward rule, and if you practice more, you will understand this better. Even if you don't understand it well and you make some mistakes, Python is always there to show you the error message. This is one of the useful things of Python, that most of their messages are very clear and very useful. So now we come to another interesting concept, which is the variable length arguments in function call. So sometimes we actually need more flexibility when we are defining the functions, like we do not know what will be the number of arguments in advance. So Python allows us to make such function calls with variable length arguments. So I have defined here a very basic function saying define my underscore function, and in the parentheses I have star args. And inside that I write for I in args print I. So this is a very default simple function. Then I pass it 4 values, 1, 2, 3, 4. And when you run this, I'm getting all the 4 values. But now we can change the number of values, and I'm just passing 2 values. Again, you run this, you will get all 2 values. Even in this case, the function works well. And now I'm passing, instead of 2, 5 values. And there are strings and alphanumeric strings mix. And let's run, execute this. And again, in this case, the function works. So what is happening essentially is when we use the asterisk or the star sign before the argument, Python understands that you are going to send it multiple values. So it considers this is not as a single value, but a multiple values or multiple arguments, and stores them inside in such a way that just like list or a tuple, you can iterate over it and do stuff to it. So suppose you would have given here, instead of for loop, you would have given, say, print 0 index of the arguments. And so now this is the first parameter of my function you are passing, and we can print that again. Once you print, you will just get the first index of this parentheses, which is home. So for our curiosity, let's see what kind of structure is this where we are storing all the parameters. So let's run this one, and then here we run this again. You will see that it's a tuple. So internally, whenever you are giving a star sign, Python is saying, okay, instead of having just 1 or 2 or 6 or any fixed number of arguments, I can have any number of arguments. So Python is essentially storing all of these arguments as a tuple, and that's why you're not having any issue calling the same function again and again using different number of parameters. So just like positional arguments with variable length, you can also have keyword arguments with varying lengths. Instead of here using a single asterisk, you can use a double asterisk. So let's see what happens. Let's execute this. We are passing here 4 arguments. Each argument is a keyword argument. So A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, and D is 4. Let's execute this. So we get all of the variables or parameters and their values correctly. Now instead of 4, we can pass 2 arguments, and we will get them correctly as well. Essentially, when you use these 2 asterisk symbols here, Python expects that whatever you are passing it can be a lot of keyword arguments, and internally Python stores them in a form of a dictionary. That's why we can use the items function here, as you see in the function. So another concept dealing with function is scope of variable. So let's see what is this. Suppose I have created this variable called name, and it is created outside the function, and it's a string of variable outside function. I create a function, and also I return the same variable name inside this function. Let's see what happens. So when I'm calling this function and when I'm trying to print the value of the name directly, you see I get the same output. Either I call the function or I call the variable directly. So this basically means you're able to access the value of this variable name inside this function. So this variable that is defined outside the function is known as the global variable in Python. And any variable that is defined inside the function is known as a local variable. So now we have another interesting experiment. We have the global variable name here, and we are trying to change the value of name inside the function. So let's see what happens. First, let's execute this line of code, and now I will print both the output of this function and I'll print the value of the global variable. As you can see, the values are actually different. The reason is when you not create any variable inside a function, and if you use the name of a global variable, it always takes the value of the global variable. Any point of time inside the function, if you create a variable with the same name as a global variable, this is essentially not the same thing. This creates a new variable whose scope is actually limited to this function. So this variable inside the function only exists inside the function. That is why when you're printing the output of this function, it is giving the value what you have set here. But whenever you come outside of the function and print the name, then you're trying to print the value of name, which is a global variable. And this variable does not exist outside the function. You're actually printing the name variable, which is a global variable. So this is the concept of scope for a variable inside a function and outside a function. And it's very straightforward. As long as you're not creating the same variable with the name inside the function, the global scope works. Whenever you create a new variable inside the function, this takes precedence over this, and the only shortcoming of this is it only stays inside the function. The minute you come out of the function, as we have done here, you don't get this updated value, you only get the original value. So this is a kind of dilemma for us, and we actually wanted to do here was we wanted to update the value of this variable itself, which is the original global variable. We were not all interested in creating a new variable inside the function and talking about local variables. So you can fix this problem using another keyword in Python known as global keyword. So what global does here, it basically says that anytime I'm going to use the variable name inside this function, do not create a new variable, because basically this name actually is the global name variable. Whenever I use this variable inside the function, make any changes to it and something to it, delete something, I essentially mean the global name, the only name that exists outside. So you're telling Python, please do not create any other new variable, and that's why this piece of code is going to work. So initially you had this value variable outside the function, which is name. Now you can give it any value inside using the global keyword, and no matter how many times you print, even by calling the function directly or calling the variable directly, you will have the same value. So this is the use of global keyword when dealing with variable scope in functions. Now if you still have doubts in this concept, just keep on practicing it again and again. It's a very straightforward concept and I think you will get it. Thank you for watching this video.